Hi, this is Mark Laughlin with the Ambidextral Gunfighter, www.ambgun.com. Today I'm going to go over some issues I have with a lot of the modern techniques for gripping the pistol. And I'm going to talk about what I call the Fulcrum Grip. I think a lot of the problems, the bastardization of our modern day shooting techniques, as well as the design of many firearms, is a result of an obsession with the stopwatch in many of the current sports that we have in the shooting industry. And the problem with our sports, as far as gunfighting, if we're trying to make them a martial sport to where that has some translation to gunfighting, problem with our shooting sports is that there is no return fire. Paintball would be an exception, and airsoft may be an exception as well. But when you're just running through a maze, shooting as fast as you can, making good use, appropriate use of cover, being ambidextrous and making excellent use of cover, and having to deal with incoming fire, the stress of that. I think the modern grip techniques, a lot of the modern shooting techniques do not apply or have limited application in the gunfighting world. One of the problems we have as humans is that if we see somebody cool, or an alpha male kind of a character that's shooting a particular way, the rest of us want to mimic them. And so we don't really question the validity of the technique. We just follow along because, hey, we want to be cool too. What I want to go over is it's my hypothesis, the Fulcrum Grip hypothesis. Now, and the fulcrum, I give it the fulcrum name is because the web of your thumb is a fulcrum point on your pistol. It is a point where you have leverage. Now you have when the round goes off, you have this energy translated directly on this bore axis. And the distance from the bore axis to your fulcrum point, which if we measure that, in this case on this particular pistol, it is 1 1/4 inches. So we know that the bore axis is 1 1/4 inches above the fulcrum point. Okay, the other end of the fulcrum is basically over here at the bottom of the grip. And if I measure from the fulcrum point to basically my pinky finger placement, where we have the maximum leverage, it is on this pistol 3 1/4 inches long. So we have about a 3-to-1 leverage on this at this fulcrum point. A 3-to-1 leverage from our pinky to the bore axis. And you figure that basically the slide, the amount of energy it takes to work the slide to the rear, that is approximately the maximum amount of energy. Now, it may bottom out a little bit, but let's say it's a 20-pound force on this bore axis. Now 20 pounds with our leverage, that translates to about just under 7 pounds at the pinky. Now in my view, the pinky is perfectly capable of dealing with that leverage, and with this leverage to the fulcrum point should be able to completely handle any recoil as far as grip on the pistol. So if under fire, if you are not even grabbing, you're only holding the pistol with the web of the thumb and your pinky, I believe that you can completely hold this pistol, keep the muzzle level, and fire it without having this monstrous, aggressive grip on the pistol. Now there is one point where we look back to the fulcrum, we have a bit of elasticity in this web here, this elasticity of the skin running across there, and muscle and other tissue in there. And so looking at from just the pinky to that fulcrum, now with that elasticity, there is a little bit of give there at the fulcrum. So what we want to do is preload the fulcrum so that it does not have any movement in it. And we do that by bringing the middle finger across and just meeting the thumb. The thumb can just touch it, and kind of like a wrestling hold, where you can't actually, in wrestling, you can't interlace your fingers, but you can, get your skin against each other, and that gets a bit of enough of a bite. And we don't need a lot. I mean, it's just enough to preload. We're not trying to grip the pistol. We're just trying to preload that web of the thumb on the fulcrum point. So bringing that middle finger over and connecting it with the thumb just a little bit, and that's enough pressure to preload. And you see how my web of the thumb, there's a little bit of a wrinkle back there now where it's preloaded. And so between that and my pinky, we now have leverage, and we have the fulcrum point preloaded, and so that is enough to restrain the weapon under recoil, under my hypothesis. Now, what do we do with this remaining finger that's sticking out there? Now, my suggestion is that we go ahead and curl that around the grip. It does provide maybe a little extra grip, but it also prevents us from offending whoever we're shooting at. We don't want them to mistakenly think we're flipping them the bird. So bring that down, and now we've got a complete grip. Most of the work is being done by your pinky because it has the leverage. Maybe a little bit's done by your ring finger, and then your middle finger and your thumb are preloading the web of the thumb. Of course, at this point, we're looking at trigger control, and it's often mentioned that we want to do an exaggerated or a C-shaped trigger finger, so that we're working right off the pad of our trigger finger, and we're not dragging wood, or in this case, not dragging polymer. So we've got a gap between our finger and the pistol. Now, of course, if you put it right on the pad of your finger, that gets a perfect straight back pull. But even in a panic situation, if your grip's the right size and you bury that trigger finger, it's going to basically still be pretty much a straight back pull. And with the design of most pistols nowadays, where they've got these grooves cut here, which many people think are for your thumb, and can be for the thumb, but I'm using the thumb down to tag in with this middle finger. But that does allow the trigger finger plenty of space, so you can actually bury the trigger finger and still get a straight back pull and not drag polymer. Okay, so once we have the grip, the key part is locking out the wrist. The wrist is actually what typically is what is giving under recoil. Usually your grip, because you have the leverage here from your pinky to your fulcrum, that is plenty to prevent recoil there. And the grip does not have to be all that forceful. It is the wrist that needs to be locked out, as well as the elbow too. And for point shooting, that is what we used for our proprioception or our physiology, so that we're aiming with our body, not using our eyes and the sights for aiming, but a locked elbow, locked wrist, and now we can point to the target and hit it. But by locking the wrist, that is preventing the recoil, because usually that's what breaks, is the wrist. It's what is absorbing recoil. So if we can lock that with a relatively light grip, that's enough. So now we have locked wrist, locked elbow, the leveraged fulcrum grip, and eyes on target, eyes on the threat. We're watching the threat, and we're looking at the threat, looking for injury points that we can impact. So we look at the threat, and we're pointing our weapon at those injury points, because we want to cause injury. We want to destroy our opponent, and we're basically taking him apart. So we don't want to just shoot him in a non-lethal area. We're going to take him out. And then at this point, we're still using one-handed, because we're at close enough distance that we're able to hit our target using one hand with our fulcrum grip, locked wrist, locked elbow. We're focused on the target, not on our sights, and we're point shooting with our body. And this allows us also to make use of cover. So we can come around the left side of cover with our left hand, come around the right side of cover with our right hand. And we're not having another support hand at this point interfering with our use of cover. And that also leaves our support hand to do other tasks, whether we need to maybe while we're measuring something or making a phone call or taking, taking a selfie. If we need to take a selfie while we're in a gun battle, we have that hand free to do that. Okay, and then finally, if distance allows, we have enough basically time and space, we're on target, and if distance allows, see, we've got our Fulcrum grip, we can bring this other hand up and interlace with our Fulcrum grip. Now, I like doing it this way, and the reason is because my main thing is not to get a stronger grip on the pistol. My grip is already plenty strong enough for that. This purpose of this is to help lock my wrist. Is to reinforce the locking of the wrist, reinforce the locking of the elbows, and help hold everything more steady. And then also, I want to keep this thumb, I'm helping to pull my thumb down a little bit out of the way. I don't want anything interfering with the controls. Everything is away from the controls. Nothing's going to interfere with me using the trigger. Even if I bury that trigger finger all the way in, I don't have a thumb in the way or a palm swell that's going to get in the way of me working the trigger. And then also, I'm not going to be in the way of accidentally engaging my slide stops on either side. So a lot of people complain about when you're doing the thumb's forward grip, with the thumb way forward, you've got all this interference with your controls. You're interfering, getting in the way potentially of your trigger finger. You're potentially accidentally engaging your slide stop. So in my opinion, the benefits of recoil control of the thumb's forward grip are not outweighed by the interference with pistol controls. And then also, I mean, it's really, you do have some leverage here, but you have basically the same leverage down here without all that interference. And then the other thing is, typically when you're doing the thumb forward grip, at least as I've understood it, is a lot of times you're almost getting these fingers a little bit out of the way. I mean, I'm exaggerating here, but you want, because on the thumb's forward theory, is you want this palm getting a full surface area on the grip. And so basically you're sandwiching between two hands your grip, both sides. And so with kind of the fingers exaggerating again, like I said, I'm bringing them forward a little bit so I can get that full surface area grip with the thumbs forward shooting position. Now, what I don't like is that is not a good transition from one-handed, because one-handed we want our full grip. And so bringing up this other hand, if we're having to bring this into play, we're having to basically shift our grip quite a bit in order to establish the thumbs forward double-handed hold. So that's why I prefer all of the grip be handled by your firing hand, and this is just support, added support, adding on top of your already stable shooting platform. And like I said, I want basically whatever grip I'm using, I want my trigger finger to be unobstructed, nothing to interfere with it. So whether I'm using this hold, I want everything clear of that trigger guard. The only finger that needs to be anywhere near the trigger is my trigger finger, because it needs to be not obstructed. I don't want it to have something, a thumb in the way here, like if I put my thumb right there and I bring the trigger finger in and try to fire, if I've buried my trigger finger because I'm panicked, now I'm like, my gun's not working, and now I'm in a serious panic. So keep clear of the trigger guard. I mean, typically, of course, you want, that pad of the finger, your trigger finger right on the trigger, the middle of the trigger, or middle of the pad, pulling straight back. But in panic, you may go bury that trigger finger, and you need plenty of clearance in case that happens. Today I was just doing some experimentation, because this is science, as far as doing the comparison of the thumbs forward grip versus just a simple, what I'm calling Fulcrum grip, Fulcrum. I'm saying Fulcrum, so that means I'm doing science. And we're talking leverage, so that's again science. And we actually did some math. We calculated the leverage that the pinky has on that bore axis. So science. And so we're attempting to do a little bit of a comparison to show that it's really not that hard to hold a pistol and to keep that muzzle steady. We got some slow motion video we're going to throw in here, and so again, we're doing some research, we're doing science, and trying to counter the real popular thumbs forward hold. I mean, it's, you know, it's, everyone is doing it. It's the experts are recommending it. I just do not see the necessity of it, given that you've got that leverage on the grip. Why do we need to hold down so much? In my opinion, the weak spot is in the wrist, where your bore axis has a little more leverage. And so if we can lock that wrist, get a decent grip. It doesn't have to be that firm of a grip as long as your wrist is locked. And take out the slack in the web of the thumb. Take that slack out take that slack out with the connection of the thumb and the middle finger. So thumb and middle finger make contact, taking out the slack on the web of the thumb. Pinky is handling 90% of the leverage against the bore axis, and now we just gotta lock that wrist. And if we can lock the wrist, you know, you always hear, you know, limp wristing the pistol. That's what it is. It's the wrist. There's a lot of flexibility there, and so we've got to just. It's kind of hard to tighten up that wrist and not also overly tighten your grip. Not sure how we solve that. Maybe it can be something we can practice and learn. Anyway, that's my contribution to the science of handgun grip. Please, if you like the video, please like, share, and subscribe, and comment down below. Do some counter science, do some research your own. Let's see where this goes. Anyway, that is the Ambidextral Gunfighter Fulcrum Grip hypothesis. Please like, share, and subscribe. Definitely comment below what you think of the Fulcrum Grip hypothesis. Thanks for watching.